Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service for March 29th, 2022. I'm your current president, Sally Gaskill, and it's my pleasure to introduce Tim Jessen, who has a special guest today.
You can be seated. It was my pleasure and privilege to be in charge of the speech contest that we had just a few weeks ago. And so today we are happy to have as our reflection the winner of the speech contest, who is known to us through his earlier efforts as a volunteer in Rotary. He is Alan Martindale, and his mother will be introduced later. I also wanted to thank, before Alan comes to the podium and gives the speech, which he will also give at the district convention here in a couple of weeks, the people that helped me in the contest. The judges was Ron Jensen, who's a Rotarian, Bess Lee, and then we had Bob Bernacki, who did, stand up, Bob, did all the technical work. And though the speech was matchless and unbeatable in every respect, Bob had the best video presentation, I'm sure, of all the speeches. Now, without any further ado, would you please welcome the winner of our speech contest, Alan Martindale.
It goes without saying that the last few years have been a wild season in all of our lives. The COVID pandemic is something that has affected every person in this room in ways both large and small. Schools were shut down, businesses were closed, and lives were turned on their head in a variety of ways. We've had time to slow down and think about why things have been the way they have and what we can do to make the future better. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the COVID pandemic, its effects, and how we need to use the four-way test to evaluate our actions and how we perceive the actions of others. The first point of the four-way test is it the truth? The great American author Mark Twain once said that that a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. While he may have been born nearly 150 years before the invention of the internet, his words certainly ring true today due to how easy it is to spread lies in the digital age we live in. Because of how easy it is to find lots of information, both good and bad, on the internet, it's important that we only share information that we believe to be true and to do our research before we formulate our opinion on a subject. I believe if we work towards using this point of the four-way test in our daily lives, it will lead to better discussions, less disagreements, and overall more good will be accomplished. The second point of the four-way test is it fair to all concerned? It's common knowledge at this point that the COVID virus affects people who are older and with underlying health conditions more severely. According to the Mayo Clinic, in the US, 81% of deaths have been in people aged 65 and older. Risks are even higher for older people when they have other health conditions. Such health conditions that can make you at greater risk for the virus include lung diseases, heart disease, strokes, dementia, diabetes, and cancer. Now, some people may say that it's not fair to these people, that they need to be more worried about the virus than the rest of us, but I ask, what can we do about it? While it may not be the solution to force all people to be vaccinated and wear masks in all situations, it's still important that we do our best to protect those who are at higher risk. Whether it means getting a vaccine or wearing a mask around these people, it's important to pay attention to this part of the four-way test. The third part of the four-way test is, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Over the course of the pandemic, we were separated from our friends, coworkers, and family members. Being separated from these people made it hard to stay in touch with them and keep good relationships. I know this from experience. Over the 2020 school year, our school made it so that half of the students would go on one day and half of the students would go on the other. This made it so that I was unable to see half of my friends pretty much ever, and it made it very difficult to stay in contact with them. Because we know how difficult it is when these relationships are neglected, it's all the more important that we stay in contact with those we may not see as often and maintain goodwill with those around us. The fourth part of the four-way test is, will it be beneficial to all concerned? It goes without saying that the COVID pandemic has had adverse effects on people in all walks of life, but just as in every adverse situation, it's important to see what good has come out of it. First off, people were laid off of their jobs and were forced to work from home, but now they have added lifestyle flexibility and more time to spend with their friends and family members. The healthcare system was put under tremendous stress, but now we're able to see just how important healthcare workers are and all the good work that they do that helps us in our daily lives. Similarly, schools were shut down and in-person learning was stopped, but now we're able to appreciate teachers that much more because of all the hard work they do. Zoom allowed us to connect with friends and family members that live far away or we may not get to see as often in a way that we hadn't thought of before. And I think we're all stronger as a community because of all we've had to go through together. So if there's one thing I want to leave with you today, it's this. Don't forget what has happened over the last few years. Be sure to only spread information that is true and to do your research before you formulate an opinion. Be fair to those around you and protect those who are at higher risk for the virus. Stay in touch with people you may not see as often and maintain goodwill with those around you. And see the good and the bad situations and appreciate the people that work behind the scenes to make our lives better. Thank you for your time.
Alan, congratulations, not only for winning our club's four-way speech contest, but also that of our district. And that's why we get to hear you on April the 9th at the district conference. John Vanderzee, would you like to introduce our guests? Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. It's good to see full tables for a change. And consequently, we have several guests. First is Mark Weidenmeyer. Did I say that right, Mark? Wiedemeyer, sorry. Guest of Michael McAuley. Mark is a local musician. Vivian Bridges, a guest of Jim Bright. Let's see, Alan Martindale, I'm sorry, is a student and guest of the club. Alan, would you stand? Thank you. Oh. Pam Martindale. Matt Fife, who is a guest of Trent Deckard. Matt has made his way around the tables introducing himself. He is a candidate for the 9th District Congress, one of 3 Democrats. Welcome, Matt. And Bitta DeWeese, I'm sorry, guest of Leslie Green. Welcome back, Bitta. And Joy, we have guests on Zoom?
Why, yes, I do, John. We have 2 guests on Zoom this afternoon. We are pleased to have with us Susan Adams, who is with the New Albany Rotary Club, and she is the chair of the district four-way test speech contest. And congratulations, Alan. Hi, Pam. Sorry, I had to take my microphone and do that. And we also have joining us, who will be joining us as an official Rotarian in April, Teresa Clare with Herlo Wealth Management. And these are both guests of Jim Bright. So take it away, Sally.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, John. And special thanks again to Susan Adams from the New Albany Club for coordinating the district four-way test contest, but really special thanks to Tim Jessen for doing it for us. Okay. Now, I do like to thank people because without them, we wouldn't have a meeting every week. And that goes to Michael Shermis with his assistant this week, Dave Meyer on tech, and our Zoom host, Joy Harder. The roundabout reporter for this week is Susie Graham. And please be sure to sign up to give the reflection, introduce guests, or be a greeter for the last quarter of this year, which is April, May, and June, online. Thank you. We've got bunch of birthdays this week. Last week, no birthdays. This week, a bunch. John Zodi, happy birthday on March 31st. We've got 2 April 1st birthdays, Sandy Keller and Steve Moberly. That must be fun to have an April 1st birthday. It's not, says Steve. However, we've got 3 April 2nd birthdays. That's really amazing. Judge Jeff Bradley, Ben Pearson, who was our speaker last week, and past president and assistant district governor, Sarah Laughlin, April 2nd. And finally, Tina Peterson was born on April 3rd. We also have a number of member anniversaries this week. Becky Jessmer, 2 years in our club. Jerry Pajak, 7 in our club and 16 overall as a Rotarian. Congrats, Jerry. And then 3 of our founding mothers all joined this week, not in the same year. 32 years ago, Monica Kroner became a Rotarian. Tina Swanson, 33 years ago, and Charlotte Zitlow, 34 years as a Rotarian. And now, I'd like to invite Lauren Snyder up to make a few comments about next week's Rotary meeting. And while Lauren comes to the podium, I'd like to note that his wife, Morgan, was named to the Indianapolis Business Journal's 40 Under 40 last week. Congrats to Morgan and Lauren.
Well, I feel like I need to reintroduce myself to everybody. I'm Lauren Snyder, past president of the club, believe it or not. But the reason I'm up here today is because I'm also going to be the president of our Rotary Bloomington Club Foundation this coming next Rotary year, starting on July 1st. And this next week, we're going to have a Hyper Happy Dollars in pursuit of fundraising our scholarship obligation on an annual basis. So we commit $6,000 for $1,500 scholarships to local students attending higher education. And our goal in the next Rotary Foundation and Rotary year is to start pursuing how we can basically endow those scholarships on an annual basis. You may or may not know, we have about a $50,000 fund at the Community Foundation, and that kicks off some money, but not enough to fully fund those $6,000 worth of scholarships. Our goal in the next year is to get that to a level that it would produce enough income on an annual basis so that we don't have to fund that from our budget on an annual basis. So that's just a precursor to what I'm going to be coming and we're going to be kicking off. I'm titling it the Fountain of Youth, and I'm saying that because we are trying to fund something in perpetuity that funds the youth of our community. I don't know if there's anything better and more worth our investment than the youth within our community and making sure they're educated. So more to come on the Fountain of Youth in the coming year, but next week, be sure to come with checkbooks and things for a round of Hyper Happy Dollars. That's it. Thank you.
You may note that on your table here in the Frangipani room is the Lunch Buddies list. Thank you, Natalie, for preparing that for us. And I'm sure that those of you on Zoom somehow have access to the list as well. That is beyond my pay grade, so I'm not quite sure how you're going to get it. But you will get it, fear not, probably in the roundabout. My final announcement of this morning is kind of fun, and hat tip to Owen Johnson for this one. Mike Baker and 2 other people have received a patent for a new variety of a hop plant named the CV12. This groundbreaking discovery of this new hops variety is perfectly suited to the climate of southern Indiana and has the potential to change the hops industry as we know it. Who knew that Mike Baker was involved in something like this? I think it might be worth having Mike up for a program sometime to tell us about his discovery of a patent. And with that, I would like to invite Charlotte Zitlow to introduce today's speaker.
Okay, can I do it from here? Yeah. Okay. We're very, excuse me. A few months ago, I went to a meeting of, well, actually a meeting of youth club, and I sat next to a young man, and we started talking because I always ask questions, who are you, why are you here? Actually, I had met him before in the Glen Close exhibition. And he turns out he said, well, I'm the person who did this sculpture of Hoagie Carmichael. I said, wow, that's amazing. Can you come and talk to Rotary? Because Hoagie Carmichael was not a Rotarian as far as I know, but he was definitely a member of our community. And Michael, it turns out, is a native Bloomingtonian, Michael Livingston McAuley. And he does this wonderful bronze likeness of Hoagie Carmichael, which is right outside the entrance to the theater and between that and the exit from the auditorium, where lots of people like to put flowers on the piano and sometimes sit down and pretend they're playing. So, so anyway, he graciously agreed to come and talk to Rotary, and I think he's got a very interesting approach to art, which extends beyond just the manifestations of his work, but it's a spiritual part of art that he particularly is concerned with. I'm going to try to read some of his manifesto. And forgive me. Excuse me, forgive me if there's some words that I make up as I go along. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
What is what? This is service before self. Thank you. Okay. He says, consequently, I believe art should possess the power to leap into a deep level of appreciation and awareness of the divine. This then moves beyond the somewhat stoic towards technical, toward counting the vision and awareness related to object. I'm going to skip to the end. The end is the best. We end up with, if life is what we believe. Do you know it by heart? Okay, the last few.
If life is what we all desire, the kind contributing to our feeling alive and emboldened with purpose, understanding, and meaning, then art is indeed a valid endeavor. This is what I search to evoke in every work of art I create. Michael McAuley.
Thank you, Charlotte. I should know that by heart, but it's been written quite a while ago. In addition to the flowers people put on Hoagie that Charlotte mentioned, they put bottles of beer for him too when he gets real thirsty. He's known to imbibe quite a bit in the past. Thank you, Michael, for setting up the tech. We had a bit of time getting that together. And I appreciate Mark Wiedemeyer being here because he posed as Hoagie Carmichael when I did the sculpture. So that helped immensely. It was his celebration of service. So thank you. I have 20 minutes. I was given to this. It might go 2022, so we'll stay within that framework. So in the sense of Rotary Club celebration of service, my talk is more directed toward a celebration of the service Indiana University has directed toward me in my life in the field of fine art, broadly speaking, and undergirds my decision-making. In this talk, I will be conveying a few points via still images, fine art, and video clips. As you can tell from the title of my talk, the foundation of your critiquing process in life via art, this will be more on the end of the pragmatic section a bit more right-brained, a bit more idealistic. Though in my work, I have gladly incorporated pragmatic elements relevant to making my career decisions. Though within this idealism comes a certain amount of perfectionism, a desire to see that ideal come to fruition fully intact, exactly as intended. I say this to indicate my personal orientation to any project. Again, more on the idealistic end of the spectrum than the pragmatic. I like background information. I like stories. So I thought it might be enlightening to hear 3 background stories which may have been indicators of my life's direction. Everyone has a story, and I think everyone enjoys a story. Short story 1. From as far back as I can remember, my mother would babysit me with an abundance of coloring books. After I did one, she'd say, "Oh, well, here's another." And that happened numerous times. That led me to start creating my own images in color. And seeing her do her own artwork made a significant part of my life. Short story 2, growing up, my father had a workshop which I wasn't restricted in using, though almost excommunicated for not putting his tools away properly. I had the idea of making a go-kart out of a menagerie of scrap wood and leftover building materials in his workshop. This would be a luxury go-kart with doors and other fine accessories. When my grandfather came to visit, he said, "That's never going to fly. That'll be way too heavy." Then he started dismantling it down to the bare bones. Even though I saw the practicality of not having all these extraneous luxury extras, I still wanted my version, but maybe modified. Possibly this scenario gave more fire to my passion to create only my way with input. Short story 3. Orson Welles' movie classic Citizen Kane had a great impact on me. At the movie's conclusion, I thought, really? Kane built this business empire, but was left with only a memory of a simple object of impoverished joy? What's that about? What's the meaning here? This thought lingered along with the fascination of the cinematic artistry of the film. This could indicate appreciating aesthetics and questioning meanings may be a significant part of my life. Now, when enrolling at IU, I came to take my courses seriously, not for the usual pragmatic reason of getting a good education in order to gain a high-paying job, but to ask questions, to learn, to know, to understand a bit deeper. Stay there. But within these questions and my inborn idealism, I did partially become a symbol of an art student stereotype. I don't want to make any money, folks. I just love to do art. The consistent thing that I did notice in my coursework was always being presented with 2 core elements: a goal with accommodating objectives, a goal which was to be achieved, and then steps to fulfilling that goal. But from that, it seemed logical to carry this concept over to a paradigm for planning one's own life, to have a central goal and objectives to get there. I saw within the melting pot of IU students, every individual needed to decide for their own self what life goals and objectives would be. No one should decide and demand an allegiance to a certain life goal for others. It was their decision to decide for themselves what that goal should be. It seemed there should be a goal or a guide, so when life's confusion mucks up your vision and darkness obscures your decision-making, it's time to back up and remember that one fundamental thing, that one thing.
You all come up here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here will time for you. None of you get it. Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
Excuse his French. So what is that one thing? For me, it's two things: to create a better you and to create a better world. So really, there is merely one thing to consider. Now, of course, the question is, how do you create a better you? Where do you find that answer? Here, IU brought about the same answers again. Part of my undergraduate classes at IU were in world religions, philosophy, statistics, and evaluation. And even with a short flirtation with Zen Buddhism through art, I eventually found many repeated instances and consistencies and sticking manifestos compelling me to finally land back on a historical Judeo-Christian view of truth. That is, an intelligent designer given to organizing sub-rules within the seemingly chaos of human life, establishing, among other guides, that there is an overall base logic to this world and not chaos. And the golden rule is a valid guide. Treat others as you wish to be treated. But down in Austin, Texas, the interpretation may not work so well. This view of truth was not an easy answer. But then that earlier logic of a goal and then objectives made deeper sense. There must be a central codifying goal or truth which held together answerable conclusions. Truth then as a base level guide allowing you and guiding you to correct conclusions. That is a central truth with a goal, then objectives as smaller universal truths to bring about realizing that goal. And it could not be relative. That is a relative changing truth or truth in a specific situation, proclaiming that as truth, then change it every time you want truth to be something else because it doesn't please you in that state. For me, truth must be stable and relevant in all situations to be a real central truth. I see this illustrated in what I viewed in both the positives and the negatives, the yin and the yangs of life, if you will. On the inverse of this, I realized that there has been a philosophy floating around for years that there is no truth. Truth does not exist. I've looked at that, and for me, if truth does not exist, we do not exist. The images which follow are merely a few visual examples of how this background informed my decisions, and a belief that knowing was good. Hence, learning was good. Going back to the one thing, learning allows and leads one to become a better person, as in more equipped to contribute to the world at large. And I could learn at Indiana University. Going back to the one thing, learning allows and leads one to become a better person, and I just said that. This truth is unchanged for me, and indeed guided me as to an art student in my decision making. For example, when encountering a graduate student in art, I asked them, "How do you come up with your ideas?" The response was, "You really can't learn this stuff. You either got it or you don't." I thought, then why are you here enrolled in art school? Where's the purpose? Where the purpose is to learn art, learn principles which make up art. For me, this denied logic, and it was not a good and valid direction. For my art classes at IU, I encountered two different approaches by professors teaching art. One stated, in effect, my way or technique and approach to art was the only way. The other professor stated, here's my technique and approach to art. I'll show you the various philosophies and techniques to art, and it is for you to determine which approach you are naturally drawn to and which excites and motivates you. And this path is what I recommend to follow. I determined the first professor's philosophy would limit my options and potential. The other professor's viewpoint seemed applied with respect to what learning and education was all about, what being at IU was all about. Learning then, funneling that learning to the benefit of a student's innate skills and talents seemed right. I chose this path. Another universal truth I saw was sacrifice and effort leads to the accomplishment of good work. Good work has the greatest possibility of standing the test of time. For example, classics are called classics because much learning, effort, concentration, and time to make mistakes has gone into their creation, as opposed to
see all of the details, all of the nuances, and the slight things that would be overlooked if it were a dark color. It seemed to please me to begin that way, but I don't know why.
I get the sense that you think the meaning is there in the physical material of it.
Yes, that's right.
There isn't
yes.
a meaning somewhere else.
No, the meaning is
Why not?
Is what we see.
Most people want there to be a meaning somewhere else and a picture that refers to it.
Oh, there is. Well, there's the meaning of the experience of seeing it. Because when you see it, well, you hopefully you would have you would feel good. I mean, you would feel as if it was a maybe unusual or interesting or very pleasing thing to see. And so you would have you would want to maybe smile, or I think it's like that with all painting.
This is the first all-white painting of modern art, painted in 1915 by Kazimir Malevich, the Russian painter.
done in 1915, and it's called Modern Art still. IU taught me skills. There was something to teach. For me, this blank canvas scenario or lack of engagement of the visual is more directed toward philosophy standing in for art as opposed to art encasing philosophy. Though I also love the abstract in art, I believe you must have something to abstract. Once you're exploring nothing, there is nothing else to explore. The year 2000, I moved back to Bloomington after teaching visual communication and starting the sculpture program in Jackson, Mississippi to start a design studio. Seeing Hoagie Carmichael was still venerated by Bloomington, though no tangible evidence existed to verify that, I saw an opportunity to use my skills to bring a significant tribute into existence. Drawing on my learning is diverse mantra, I believed I had synthesized enough information over the years in art and design, philosophy, teaching, and dealing with marketing aspects of business that after doing some background research, I could make a life-size bronze sculpture tribute happen. After I contacted Hoagie's son, Hoagie Bix Carmichael, for an initial financial statement or seed money, I set out to promote, market, fundraise, and design collateral materials with a website leading to a final sculptural tribute. As a matter of a mere 6 years, and while I was operating my design studio still, I initiated this. And besides the Herman Wells sculpture, the Hoagie sculpture has been placed in one of the most pleasing and appropriately designed settings on campus. The point is, I could not have considered such a risk-taking venture without the belief that diversity of learning is good. And synthesizing this learning provided the basis for offsetting the risk involved. Here's a blatant self-serving clip of a documentary an IU student put together on the effort it took to make this sculpture happen. IU reinforced how necessary good research is for my successful outcome. The Hoagie Project was no different.
Is this sculpture important? Yes.
I've taken a totally non-traditional path of getting this together. It's a stretch to do everything myself, but I started with that in mind. I want Bloomington to be a certain type of city, a certain type of town. And I saw Hoagie, the sculpture tribute to him was not done, and it was logical that should be done. I decided it was time to move ahead.
Michael McAuley is a very impressive young man. He's had his own background here, and he's proud to be making this contribution.
Michael's very passionate about what he's doing, clearly. He has a passion for Hoagie's music and for Hoagie as a person. He brought a piece of material I still have today. It's got a little sketch of what Michael's vision was for the piece. He's been a tireless worker, not only from the fact that he's making the piece of art, but out promoting it and getting other people interested in the project. I give him a lot of credit for that. A lot of people would have quit. This has at least been a 4-year ordeal for him that I'm aware of, and probably many more years.
I look young there. It's not the years, it's the mileage. As I said, this is a self-serving clip, though the whole documentary conveys others involved. Much good research and was at the successful core of this Hoagie project, which was the basis for leading to a logical conclusion. Therefore, in this movie clip, if one looks only at the first segment detail, one will get a skewed understanding of the reality or a total different truth. Looking further, doing the full research gives a complete understanding. Only then can one draw logical conclusions on what is happening and what can be drawn from. This short clip here does show the first part, the fact that something is being stated, but then later, if you see the whole picture and the later segment, it will show you something else. Oh, there you go. This actually talk would have gone smoother if it wasn't for COVID-19 and former President Trump and procrastination and some bad hair days. In this movie clip you just saw relates to the next one coming up. So to reinforce that point, I was given a large mural commission, 40 foot by 20 foot, for design of my choosing. As part of the design, I decided to incorporate an illustration from one of my favorite sculptors and painters, Michelangelo. When the full design was finished, if one could only view that illustration, they must conclude my work was merely a beautiful rendering of part of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel painting in Italy. And that was all. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, that's the initial illustration that was being included in the design itself. A little bit larger view of that. And so instead of viewing the entire design, one would probably conclude it was a somewhat shameless promotional for the town of Irvington, Indiana, a suburb of Indianapolis, named after Washington Irving. So another example, again, if you just look at the design itself, that some people have seen actually over the internet, you just see my design of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, part of it. So that's the entire design. So those are just kind of three different directions that my decision-making related to how I approach my art and how I approach the technique of my art. That's all the time I have. There you go. Thank you. I appreciate it. Stay here? Okay.
Time for a couple of questions, either on Zoom or in the room.
Thank you, Michael. I wanted to say, I do have a question, but first I want to say that your sculpture of Hoagie Carmichael is one of the most authentic and interesting sculptures I've ever seen. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
My question is, how long did it take you from initial sketches to final pour to complete this project?
Well, it's one of those things that's hard to determine when you have other projects going on. And again, I was operating my own design studio in Bloomington. So between trying to promote that, as I saw, when I first came to Bloomington, I saw what was called the Hoagie Carmichael Center, right next to Kirkwood. Kirkwood Avenue at the very end, Kirkwood, Indiana. And then I looked around, there was nothing to him, so I decided to do that. So actually, while running my design studio, it was about 6 years, but an enjoyable learning process in the first place. So fairly enjoyable, actually. Okay.
Yeah, Michael, can you speak to that Jack Palance, Billy Crystal segment from City Slickers? I remember seeing that back in the 1990s and reflected briefly and kind of tossed it, but obviously it spoke to you. Can you speak to us about why that segment resonated with you so much?
Sure. Well, first, anything in art I enjoy. Any aspect of art, philosophy, I enjoy. And the aspect of these men finding a crisis point in their life and they just need to shake it up a bit, and possibly looking at more the manliness, that aspect that had that was evacuated from their life, from their 9-to-5 job over the years. So they went out to a dude ranch to try to find themselves. So that changing of mindset and recapturing maybe the values that they had before spoke to me, and that was interesting. But bringing up that aspect of there is one thing. I hear that so much in art. You either got it or you don't, and you have to find out what it is, kind of access that point within yourself, but very, very hard to do if it's totally nebulous. And leaving that cliffhanger there, I thought, yes, there's one thing and two things that I think would be great to be taught in schools again. Become a better person and create a better world. However you choose to do that, to a certain extent, is up to you. But those are two elements that are very fundamental. I think we will create a better world if we look to become a better person and better you. And IU, for me, has pulled into that. So, yeah, Charlotte. Yes, I have. When I had this sculpture program in Jackson, Mississippi, which I went down there to find out how things are in Jackson. Yes, I'm sorry. What's,
Charlotte's question was, have you done other bronzes for the people on Zoom who couldn't hear her?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not speaking into the mic well. Yes, I have. My background at IU was in visual communication, but also sculpture, ceramics. And so when I went down to teach at Jackson, Mississippi, I taught visual communication, and then I did my bronze sculptures there for the school while teaching. So that really was the start of me really doing it. So yes, I have.
And one last question from Raj Hadawi on Zoom.
Michael, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Your philosophy, a page I subscribe to, as well as the beautiful art you showed us on campus. I am one of the people who put rose on hoagie hat every time I go by. But that aside, I just understood that it took you 4 years, but did you do a clay model? Did you create miniature size of hoagie, a sculpture that people could take and buy it at home?
No, I did not. I originally originally considered doing that, but the time it'd take to actually make the large sculpture and then to go back, unless I had some paying clients that would want a number of those, then I wasn't going to go in that direction. So I really did the initial sketch for Hoagie Bix Carmichael and bypassed the maquette stage and went to the full life-size sculpture. So unfortunately, no, I don't have any smaller versions of that. But thank you, thank you.
Michael, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your journey, and come back anytime. We'd love to have you. Next, in honor of your presentation today, Bloomington Rotary will be making a donation to Cardinal Stage. Now, next week, our speaker will be Lemuel Watson, Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Multicultural Affairs at IU, DEMA. His topic is Our Integrity, Humanity, and Compassion Connects Us, Understanding Systemic Changes for Inclusion. And we will be in the Stateroom East upstairs. And with that, Michael, will you please share with us the 24 words of the four-way test? Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Oh, and fifth, is it fun?
Is it fun?